Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DePINed Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. Thrilled to have Omar here. Omar is co-founder of BlockCast. Welcome, Omar.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
So, Omar, give us a quick summary. What is BlockCast? What are you doing?
BlockCast is a content delivery network fundamentally. It's a critical piece of infrastructure for the internet that allows for scaling of web services and delivery of uh, media that a lot of people need around the world. We replicate and duplicate content, um, position it closer to the user, and this is traditionally been a really exclusive industry and exclusive piece of infrastructure that ISPs and communities have been unable to leverage. So we're making it permissionless, and we're also um, rolling out much more efficient delivery rails. So unlike traditional CDNs, we do one-to-many distribution with multicast, which allows for much higher bit rates and lower costs, and most fundamentally to overcome the bottlenecks that the current CDN paradigm faces when it comes to delivering higher bit rate, live video, and so forth.
And so, just so I can rephrase some of that for people that are not as familiar with the CDN or content delivery network is, I remember this back from ages ago, being in the telecom space, when a company named Akamai went public. And Akamai, I just checked, is a $150 billion market cap company, which is probably one of the earliest, most CDN, most well-known CDN network out there. And it basically is a way to position, kind of pre-position data that they predict people will need. So you click, the response rate is really fast because the content is hosted closer to the user. Is that fair sort of kind of
Yeah,
discussion?
yeah. It's the latency of being closer to the user, but also the distance the data has to travel affects how fast you can download it. When there are requests, you're in West Africa and you're downloading from a server in Germany, you're having to go through many ISPs, and as more and more people access the same content, you end up with bottlenecks. So it's about scaling the amount of bandwidth that's available to the internet effectively. Akamai is the biggest player in the space. They're the 800-pound gorilla. They're a public CDN that major streaming providers like Disney, Hulu, who don't have their own private CDN infrastructure like Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google, have to rely on these public providers, and they're struggling with this current paradigm. So let's look at the example of Amazon. They have their own CDN infrastructure. They have massive amount of data centers and nodes that are positioned in ISPs. They have exclusive rights to Thursday Night Football that 10 to 15 million people tune into every week. But with all of the infrastructure they have, they're only able to push out 1080p. And the problem isn't the amount of servers and nodes in the network, it's the links between those data centers and the ISPs. The ISPs don't have access to putting the infrastructure where they need it, and that leads to congestion in their core. And even when you have a lot of these appliances, the fact that they're all unicast, you have tons of edge devices and edge networks that are hosting points of presence. But if each one of them requires its own unique stream of the game, you end up with bottlenecks in the ISP core.
And so how does BlockCast get involved? It's a multicast
Yeah, it's
technology.
a multicast CDN technology, and effectively we work with CDNs. We offload from CDNs, who have content, and we provide more efficient delivery routes over multicast. The you know, how multicast works, and there's so many different technologies that are region specific. We abstract away the complexity of getting that capacity and provide it, as a a single network.
And so, how does that give us some more detail as to how that works and what the value proposition is? The value proposition, higher resolution. You mentioned 1080 DPI dots per inch. Like, is it high resolution? Is it cheaper? Is it faster? Or is it some combination of those? What is the and how and why are those value proposition exist?
Great questions. It's yeah, it's you're able to get higher bitrate data because we're removing a lot of the duplicated traffic in the ISP core in their backhaul. So instead of having to open up, 100 or 1,000 1080p streams, we condense them down into a single stream that is going out to all those recipients simultaneously. And that allows us to scale up to 4K, 8K, VR content. And yeah, the value proposition is that we manage the availability of this infrastructure, and we solve essentially the cold start problem for these CDNs. Many CDNs and many people have been trying to do multicast for decades, including Akamai themselves, but it only kind of works in walled gardens, and it's very fragmented. So by using token incentives, we're addressing a incentive gap that's existed this entire period that's prevented, um, you know, there being ubiquitous access to multicast services in parts of the internet, and also that we abstract away a lot of the underlying complexity of making your services work in multicast. So it's completely transparent. You can take any existing web app, and through our CDN, it will convert your unicast HTTP into multicasts so that all the nodes in that part of the internet can leverage the same multicast stream. How we do multicast is a number of ways. There is a global industry effort to make multicast over the air more standardized and compatible. So 5G, ATSC, and DVB, they're kind of the largest wireless bodies for standards relating to consumer televisions and phones and so forth. This year, they have um, started to harmonize so that essentially your phone can receive data broadcasts from nearby TV towers. And this is happening in the industry, but there's still a lot of fragmentation, and access to these services still requires that you have multicast applications. So, that is kind of a chicken and egg problem, that you need multicast infrastructure to carry content, and you know essentially fund it, but there is no content, and there's no value in producing multicast content because there's no infrastructure to carry it. So we solve that by our CDN technology, which allows any application to leverage multicast, and allow for the operators of multicast services, be it 5G networks or television or satellite, or even ISPs themselves. So we're doing, multicast works in ISPs, and it was a fundamental part of the early streaming and video delivery efforts on the internet back in the mid 90s. There was something called the multicast backbone, and that's was seen as the only way to deliver video on the internet. It's actually how the first movie was streamed on the internet, was how the first concert, was the Rolling Stones, was able to stream on the internet back in '94. Um, but yeah, that because of incentives. ISPs don't peer multicast traffic, and it's been that way ever since. So from ISPs to TVs to cellular networks, there's a lot of fragmentation and incentive misalignment and technology obstacles for regular app developers to leverage this infrastructure that through token incentives we simplify access to. And as a result of it, it's significantly cheaper.
But that's the key bit. So I can't wait to hear how much cheaper it is. But help explain the token incentives, because that sounds like that is um, a cool, a pretty compelling part of the offering and of the architecture, and a unique piece of why crypto makes this possible.
Yeah, we're you can think of us as the helium of CDNs. We allow for existing CDNs or new CDNs that are either run by telcos themselves, or they can be commercial CDN entities to interconnect with one another through a marketplace that we're building for capacity. There have been a number of initiatives over the past 10 years to make CDNs be able to communicate with one another. And that's for ISPs who are running their own CDNs. They want to be able to program them for delivering Disney or whatever it is. And there was actually Disney that came out with the initiative to create a protocol for CDNs so that they can leverage more capacity and not rely solely on a single operator, and making that more commoditized and accessible. But it never had the token incentives or business elements for it. So there is this protocol for CDNs to talk to each other, but we're adding to it a financial incentive layer. So as a CDN operator, you can join the marketplace, and we prove out your resources, and you're able to market your capacity, and through um, a bidding system, content providers and app developers and so forth can request for capacity in certain areas and certain CDNs.
How many CDNs are out there right now? I just know of a couple of the large ones and the hyperscalers, obviously.
Yeah, there's low hundreds is the number of
Okay.
CDNs out there today, but maybe five or six of them are responsible for 80% of the traffic.
Fine.
So
And so you allow those five or six or even 100 to get together, and you now enable them a way to share traffic, which before wasn't possible.
yeah, and they can share traffic with each other, and we also run a public CDN that anyone can join. So you can run your own CDN or join our public one, and you are able to offload onto our public CDN that has the multicast capabilities. So it provides a way for major CDNs to deliver direct to consumer, and to market their services. It's a big challenge for a DePIN to gain coverage, especially if you're going direct to consumer. So we still rely on existing CDNs where we don't have coverage, much in the same way that Helium um, falls back to T-Mobile. But T-Mobile benefits from the added infrastructure that Helium operators provide, much in the same way that Akamai or any other CDN would benefit from our more efficient delivery rails.
So pick your CDN, they partner with you, they send traffic to you, you deliver that traffic because you have multicast capability, they do not. Is that right? And then they pay you for delivering that traffic, but they pay you less than they were paid. So they presumably still make a margin on that traffic. Is that fair?
Yeah, so um, you know, uh, it's in terms of the resource costs, multicast. is orders of magnitude cheaper. It's actually, it's a single stream that goes out to multiple people. The more people that are connected to it, um, the greater the magnitude of the savings. So worst case scenario, it's a single stream, and the fact that it's running on infrastructure in people's homes or in data centers, where there's excess capacity that otherwise isn't being monetized, um, we are able to tap into lower operating costs and deliver fundamentally cheaper capacity. So they're able to expand the service areas and the level of quality that they can deliver, save money in doing so, and pass those savings on to their customers.
So it sounds like the multicast technology you have is the key piece of all of this, right? That's what these guys don't have. And so how is that work? How is that developed? How is it protected? How do you implement this multicast technology, which it sounds like any other CDN would benefit from having themselves in house?
Yeah, it's um, the big challenge is, first of all, this infrastructure that we've developed that can convert existing web apps into multicast. So it's a um, you know decades of research went into this. We've added our own secret sauce on top of that to um, make it work generically for um, any kind of web service. And the challenge with it is getting it into people's homes and in parts of the internet and building out this coverage. So we're working with set-top box manufacturers. These are regular TV boxes. They're Android or Linux. And we're pre-installing it and building a footprint that way. But individuals can go and also download the client themselves and run the CDN instance in their home. And we integrate that into our network. And we still rely on ISPs to enable multicast in that you know uh, in parts of the network where it isn't enabled already. But as more people register nodes in those ISPs, it provides a cost saving incentives for the ISP to enable multicast. And they can run a CDN themselves and invite their subscribers to participate and coordinate, deals on their behalf. So it's, there are multiple parties involved, from the end user to the ISP, or broadcast operator, and the content provider, that we align and coordinate incentives and make this infrastructure easy to use. And yeah, there's a um, it's a big undertaking.
Well, listen, it sounds like it, and you threw me a little bit because I thought I had a perfect mental model of it, and then you showed the box, and so now I realize that you're involving consumers who can buy this box, install it, and presumably make some rewards for it. So, can you maybe spend a moment and backtrack a little bit and explain about how that works and the role that those that you play as a consumer holding one of these boxes?
Yeah, great. The CDN, most people don't even know it exists. It just is a piece of plumbing that we really rely on, and when it doesn't work, it makes the news. But it's a black box and it's mysterious. So the most fundamental, basic way you can participate is that you're using other nodes that people have deployed. So how you go from how you become one of those nodes is you acquire one of these boxes, and by running it yourself, you're able to use off-peak capacity and multicast services that in many cases will be freely available. And effectively, you have access to more data on your plan, and we can push out to you content that would otherwise cost you time and money, software updates, new releases of TV shows, and allow you to tap into higher quality streams than you could have otherwise been able to access with your connection. If your connection's good, and that means that you have a fast uplink, that's what we need as a CDN, because you're uploading to your neighbors and so forth while they're downloading. um, or you're in a multicast native network. So those are large ISPs have had IPTV or bundled services have multicasts enabled in them. Universities or uh, enterprise networks also have multicast. If you can reach other users as well, and maintain a high uptime, we essentially promote you, and you can become a public node that other people can connect to. So it doesn't require a lot of storage. Our main use case is live streaming, or software updates, really specific content. So you don't need those massive nodes. We do have those kind of upstream in the core of the network in the data center, and that's providing the regional data replication. But the bottlenecks have traditionally been within the ISP core, and by having these appliances in users' home, we're able to deliver one to many directly to the user with the minimal number of resources um, that the ISP would need to reach them all. Um, and eventually, with over the air, um, you can just frog leap your ISP altogether and fuse over the air broadcast capacity with your existing internet connection at home.
So is this another way of saying you're bringing content to the edge? These boxes are effectively bringing content to the edge, which is just a different way of saying, of implementing a CDN. And CDN has never been edge; it's been near edge, right? Data centers as distributed as possible. And so you're taking to the next step of bringing content to people's houses, right, in these boxes that then either serve that same house or nearby demand. Is that fair?
That's correct, and it could be to the idea is it's going direct to consumer. Like what is the
Right.
edge? It's the last mile. It's the data closet or whatever. Um, we're going directly to consumer. So it can be one of these boxes. It can be your smart television. It can be your a machine that you've dedicated. It can also be a mobile device. In India right now, they're considering legislation that will require all new smartphones to include a broadcast reception um, uh, capability, and that's because there's you know 450 million people who stream the Indian Premier League, and there's tons of people coming online in India, but you know, with that amount of load, it can um, bring down these networks. And as more people rely on the internet and streaming for critical services, in the case of national emergencies and need to access online content, it can become inaccessible. And it's a national security matter at this point. So um, you know, India's not alone. There are other countries that are also looking at similar legislation. But what that will mean is that you're able to deliver directly to the device that's consuming it. So, direct to mobile, direct to home. It's a different way of delivering content. It's been tried before. So Qualcomm did something similar back in 2010 with MediaFlow, and they launched a nationwide network in the U.S. And you had to go out and buy special handsets and devices for it. Um, But now, these are going to be ubiquitous devices. Um, so it's just a um, different time now, and the need is
So, well, let's talk
more
about these
acute than ever.
devices. So, talk about these devices. How much do they cost, and what do people get paid for installing them?
They are, um, you know, if you want to have for your own personal consumption, you don't need a special device. You can install it on your computer, and it's software only.
Right, but if you want to
When
be
it comes
broadcasting part of the
to,
network, yeah.
yeah, if you want to provide to other people, we have a special device, and we're working with OEMs on essentially security requirements. That's the big thing. Is major content providers, Google, YouTube, Facebook, are really sensitive about user privacy. So to protect users from node operators who can be malicious, think government agencies who would run these nodes and be able to um, you know open them up, install spyware on them, probe them. We have a secure device that we're selling, so that's going to be live on our site, and you can pre-order. It's still a low-cost device. We're targeting under $300, and with that, it's a TV box. You're able to enjoy media services, Netflix, whatever, and it's Netflix. Sorry, Disney alone spent $100 million in CDN fees last year to Akamai. So the amount of um, money you're able to make is dependent on how fast your internet connection is, and the number of people nearby you. But it's um, you know yeah, we um, don't have exact numbers on how much money. We don't want to promise anything right now, but fundamentally, it's a device that you know enhances your internet experience, reduces your costs, and we're targeting a 16-month ROI.
16-month ROI. Um, Basically, I'd say 16-month payback is what I think you're talking about. Um, and then, which is great. And then let's talk about token economics. Will that come? I know you guys, just to be clear, haven't launched a token. You're probably a little ways away from it, but that will come from rewards, right? And the rewards, have you figured out, will those be fixed? Will they be, if you want 16-month ROI or return, you could make those rewards scale based on the price of your token to be sort of dollar oriented, or you could pick an arbitrary token amount. Have you, like, you could get more of your token if the token went down and less if it went up, so that you're targeting more of a dollar amount to have more certainty with regard to that reward payback, or
Right.
you could just pick an arbitrary amount of token and rely on the market. The latter is what most people have done. Fluence has done the former. Have you guys, what are you guys looking at in that regard?
We're looking at a burn and equilibrium. So effectively, a you're paying a dollar amount as a consumer of the network for data, depending on the CDN in the region that you are, um, interested in reaching your users, and node operators will receive, the um, payment for traffic that they facilitate in delivery. So by running higher performant nodes, keeping it online, you have a higher chance of uh, earning rewards. And additionally, where demand is high, and high population centers and so forth, we're um, looking to introduce medallions and mechanisms for um, you know signaling um, the need for more supply in an area, and you know reward multipliers.
So um, you are benefit as a node buyer, runner, I almost call it a content delivery, whatever, facilitator in population density, or content where there's content that is being served and delivered, and you can serve and deliver that. So there's not much incentive for you to buy one of these and be in the middle of nowhere because there's not anyone to deliver that content to. So you effectively, the buy, and you said buy and mint, but it's not exactly that way because you're rewarding specific nodes more than others. And when I think of buy and mint, I think of you buy your token in the market and you mint more. That rewards every token holder equally. You're, I think, not talking about every token holder equally. You're talking about specifically the people that are serving that content, which is another layer of complexity and specificity versus just the buy and mint.
There there are a number of ways in which you can contribute to the network. So by you know looking at the value you provide, the most fundamental thing is the traffic you serve, and that's highly dependent on the quality of the service that you provide. So in that regard, um, keeping rewards to nodes who are actually serving traffic is a way to incentivize quality and getting the capacity where you need. And it's not that we are needing them exclusively in high population centers, but in areas that are um, remote and rural, there are still communities, and there are wisps, and there are no means for scaling um, delivery of video or content in those networks, and that's kind of what inspired the creation of BlockCast is rural access. But you're not going to need as many nodes there as you would need, say, in Manhattan. So that's the first point. The other point is you, as a regular user who's not serving traffic, still participate and earn tokens as a receiver for validating the resources and SLAs of other nodes, and contributing to the security of the network. So that by means of simply staying online and participating in these challenges, you earn rewards, and that is uniform for the whole network. But burn and mint is a mechanism for converting from fiat to a fixed supply of tokens, and you're minting a credit for data that is paid for in fiat, and you're burning a native token with a fixed supply that you're rewarding your nodes with.
Well, different question. You mentioned Disney paying $100 million. Obviously, people pay a lot. How much do you think BlockCast, given this distributed delivery kind of architecture you have, how much cheaper do you think it will be for the distribution of content?
It's We're targeting to reduce the costs by 50%. That's for multicast data. It's That's not what our cost basis is.
That's the price. You think the price will
That's
be
the price.
50%?
Yeah, we can cut down costs by 50%, which is significant when you're talking about the volume of traffic.
Yep.
10, 15% is enough for someone to
And just to be
change.
clear,
So
that's 50% cheaper. Is it also the same quality, or is it also a higher quality potentially?
higher quality, yeah. So the data per byte is 50% cheaper, but you can push out more data.
But you're still data per byte. So, okay. So another, back to Disney. Disney could spend $50 million do the same thing, or they could spend $100 million and have twice the resolution.
Right. So,
Okay,
if they
fair
wanted to
enough.
scale up the resolution, they'd have to pay 4 times as much for 10 from 1080p to 4K. But in our case, it would just be twice.
Terrific. What has anything? Has any innovation, it may be just a token innovation, but I think there's something else in the hardware, allowed this solution to come about now that made it not possible to implement this as of 2 to 5 years ago? Like, is there something in your box or in your architecture that is, uniquely developed or enabled in the last 6, 12, 8, 24 months or longer that made this solution possible now? This is why Akamai didn't do it in 2005.
Right. First of all, it would be our multicast adaption stack, and that was driven by recent innovations in 2017 from ATSC3 and mechanisms for reliable multicast delivery. So, UDP is an unreliable protocol. TCP is a reliable unicast protocol. So this innovation is for reliable multicast, and we built on top of it, you know, proxy systems that make it spit out HTTP like you'd hope it would. Um, but yeah, beyond that, there's tons of security challenges that we had to address. For how do you keep this completely trustless, and how do you know the data you're getting is authentic? And there were security challenges regarding the protocol itself. There have been recent um, improvements in the security of consumer hardware. Since Android 13, we have native hypervisor support in Android that allows us to run services, from multiple tenants in isolation, with security. So that's something that to thank the industry for, and of course, the pressing need since 2022, when more people transition to internet streaming than to broadcasts, sent ISPs, running in circles to how they just deployed a 5G network and already running out of capacity, and the broadcasters who are no longer becoming relevant and have billions of dollars of infrastructure, and it pushed the whole telecom and broadcast industry to work closer together, and these common standards helped to you know allow us to deploy kind of um, across networks, across regions, with the same interfaces. And additionally, I would also credit the Streaming Video Technology Alliance that was spearheaded by Disney and major streaming providers who didn't have their own CDNs, who came out and standardized the CDN interconnection protocol, which we also had a hand in, and is now a published internet standard. So there were a number of things that came together and have finally been put in place that will allow this kind of infrastructure to finally take off.
Gotcha. All right. Well, listen, it's definitely a big, um, an enormous market, and it sounds like that market is only growing, right? As video streaming happens, as AI gets the ability to create video, right, you're going to have more and more content, more and more rich content, more and more high res content that people will demand. And so CDNs become more and more important. And to your kind of implied point before, higher quality data and higher quality video is going to become a selling point, and that becomes more expensive, right? So your solution becomes almost a competitive necessity at some point, as probably streaming platforms and others and everyone is trying to compete on high quality data and high quality video, and doing so without paying dramatic amounts for it. So it sounds like
Yeah. and
even
not
if
just
you
the cost.
develop, and if you
It's
develop
literally
this,
infrastructure can't handle it
fair enough.
today.
And
That's
if you developed this 5 years ago, to your point, there wouldn't have been as much of the obvious demand for it as we can just sort of see coming right now. So it seems like this, obviously can be a very large, um, a huge opportunity. Help me understand, backing up for a little bit, let's talk about Omar for a second. How did you get into this? How did you develop, um, come to BlockCast? What led you to down this path?
I've been building network proxies since I was 13, and you know, getting around firewalls, hacking things. Um, in 2011, so I'm originally from Egypt. There was, a revolution, and I never lived there, but just um, having been, you know, immersed in technology and having a knack for it, and the opportunity to um, you know seek more knowledge and nurture that quest for learning more over the internet and having unlimited internet growing up. I felt a sense of responsibility going into college at the time to think about how um, I could build infrastructure that would give people the same opportunities. I got involved in a lab at UC Berkeley called TIER, Technology and Infrastructure for Emerging Regions. And they were building um, community infrastructure, no token incentives or anything at the time. But the project that I got involved with, we were building cell phone networks in a box that you could provide a solar panel for, consumer grade satellite internet connection, and software radio that we could provide coverage in parts of the world, like in Papua and Indonesia, where a traditional operator couldn't do so profitably, um, by empowering individuals in the community to run the service for them. So we commercialized the technology and sold to Facebook Connectivity in 2015, where we redesigned everything. It was originally a 2G network. We made it 4G to focus on Facebook's own interests and expanding internet.org. And we built out a 4G network in a box, and we're deploying it in the Congo into an island, 500,000 people. We were set up 10 towers, but they all relied on a 4 megabit per second backhaul coming from Rwanda, and there's $2,000 a meg. 4 megabits per second isn't enough bandwidth for a single person to stream in 1080p. Um, and we realized that right away. And we're asking people like, okay, can we put some content? We don't have access to CDNs. We can't give you YouTube. We can't cache that. Like, do you want Wikipedia? We can put some. We don't want any of that stuff. We want YouTube. We want Netflix. We want the same stuff that everyone else does. And I realized that there was a void in community infrastructure, and you can't have 6 different CDN boxes in a rural community. You need one, and this was something that was beyond Facebook, and there had to be a neutral, verifiable way for multiple web services to operate on the same infrastructure and to make that as compact and low cost and easy to use as possible.
That is, and how long ago did you found, or how long ago did you co-found BlockCast, and how did this? Where did the exactly kind of moment come where you're like, this is the way to do this in a decentralized way?
I was working, after, open sourcing what was Magma, what we called Magma at the time, and, Helium went on to pick that up. I transitioned to focus on backhaul, and worked with Facebook's space communications team, and got a lot of exposure to executives in the industry, who I shared my thoughts about CDN and multicast. And it was at one of these events that was able to make inroads into the in-flight entertainment and cruise ship connectivity scene, which was the biggest consumer and still remains the largest consumer of satellite bandwidth today. And you know, we had something there, and took the plunge in October of 2019. Um, Only for a few months later, the pandemic to sabotage everything, and airlines and cruise ships most severely. So that was a major setback. And the whole idea was, to focus on kind of enterprises and where this was most needed, and to bootstrap it. The idea has always been to make this permissionless, but there was a ton of complex technology that had to be built out. So yeah, and just like these protocols and understanding the production requirements of major streaming platforms. We focused on Web 2 for a bit, and built out the technology, proved it out, and we, went through the Alliance DAO program, their 11th cohort in summer of 2023, and have been building out kind of the Web3 um, permissionless infrastructure since then.
Really interesting. Well, that is story, and I mean, what a it's interesting to think about. Everyone's lives got changed by COVID, but starting a business based on the two sectors most impacted by COVID is a pretty dramatic way to begin it. And you can think if that hadn't happened, you may have ended up without the decentralized nature of it, without in a completely different
Yeah,
place. And so
yeah,
I find it a fascinating component of the story.
yeah. It's testament to there was a real problem there, and how to get there and where to start. Has that was kind of the biggest challenge. But we found that the pandemic that kind of sabotages actually um, helped us in the end, because more people switched to online streaming, and we saw the biggest growth in internet adoption as a result of the pandemic. Um, and that brought to the forefront the issues with things like Thursday night football and the massive costs that these streaming services are having to spend, and
Right,
aren't really
right. So,
profitable
so
because of
your
costs.
your your first customers basically shut down, but the market grew dramatically and permanently. And
Yeah,
those customers came
yeah,
back. So they shut down temporarily, but the market grew dramatically permanently. That's really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And just to yesterday, one of the major providers in the in-flight space came back and they're like, "Hey, we've been following what you're doing. Let's get this going." So
Um,
yeah,
Super interesting. Well, listen, how can people participate? How can they get in the wait list if they want to, install one of your routers? How can they and start delivering content? How do they find you? How do they follow BlockCast?
BlockCast.network. That's our portal that will have the ability for you to register, and participate in a number of challenges, as well as download our client, and enjoy um, higher speed downloads and streaming for the services that we're going to be announcing. So yeah, check out our website. Follow us on Twitter. We're BlockCastNet, and there's a lot of exciting opportunities to get involved in the coming weeks.
Excellent. Well, listen, look forward to the launch of that box and when people start getting them delivered, and that starts to really hum. I think it's a huge problem you're solving that's only going to get bigger, and I think it's going to be, you can be at the forefront of delivering higher of the video quality that people are going to expect. So, super interesting solution you're building. So, thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me, Tom. Real excited about what the future holds, and ways in which we can work together.
Excellent.